In the dead of night, I watched my peaceful suburban street, Maple Ridge Court, turn into something out of a Michael Bay movie. Blue and red lights were everywhere. Black SUVs slammed to a stop, and federal agents fanned out across the cul-de-sac, guns drawn, radios buzzing like angry bees. I'm talking full-on federal raid, all because a woman in a purple bathrobe couldn't mind her own business and pressed the one button she should have left alone. That woman, Karen Fitzgerald, the queen bee of our HOA, and lucky me this was happening at my house. Let me back up a second because you gotta understand how nuts this all was. I'm David Lawson, and not that long ago I thought I'd finally found my spot in the world. I moved into Maple Ridge Estate maybe 6 months ago, hoping for some real peace and quiet, good neighbors, orderly streets, the kind of place where you could leave your mower out and no one would steal it. I work remotely as a senior systems engineer for Titan Defense Systems, so security isn't just a hobby for me, it's my livelihood. My bosses at Titan, they take no chances. They rigged my house up with the kind of security setup you usually see in movies: biometric locks, encrypted lines, a panic system that goes straight to Pentagon security, you name it. At first, Maple Ridge was everything you'd hope for. Neatly trimmed lawns, American flags on every other porch, a lot of friendly waves from folks you don't really know. Just enough order to keep the chaos out there where it belongs. What I didn't count on was Karen Fitzgerald. Karen is that special kind of neighbor who acts like she's running for mayor of the sidewalks, except nobody actually wants her in charge. I met her on day one. Her handshake was firm, but her smile felt more like an inspection. "Welcome to Maple Ridge," she said, handing me a stack of papers. "I'll send you the HOA manual. It's only 347 pages, keeps our property values high." The way she said it, you'd think she'd personally written every page. First, it was little things. She left a notice on my door because my trash cans were visible for 30 minutes past the allowed window. Next, she snapped a photo and sent a formal complaint because my grass was 1¼ inches tall, not the max 1 inch. Yes, she measured it. Every note was an official letter with timestamp section numbers, like she was some sort of suburban prosecutor. I tried, I really did. I set reminders for trash day, paid for a landscaper, even put up one of those decorative screens to hide my AC unit after she claimed it disrupted the harmony of the neighborhood. But it was never enough. What really set her off was my security setup. The reinforced doors, the cameras tucked under the eaves, motion sensors in the yard. She actually walked up, clipboard in hand, and asked if my cameras pointed at any neighbor's property, warning me about some section 12.4. I told her as calmly as I could that everything was legal, but all that did was make her more suspicious. After that, she started walking by my house 3-4 times a day, stopping, pretending to check for violations, always looking for something to report. I swear the woman acted like the FBI, but with more paperwork. Then came that night. The night that changed everything. I was in my home office, knee-deep in missile guidance code, when my security system chimed. I pulled up the camera, and there she was, Karen Fitzgerald in her favorite purple bathrobe, flashlight in one hand, creeping through my yard at 11:43 at night. I almost laughed. She was notorious for her evening compliance checks, but this time she wasn't peering in my windows or measuring my grass. No, she was headed for my utility panel. You need to picture this: my utility panel's not just for the power or cable. It's where the real security hardware lives, wired straight into Titan's network. I watched in disbelief as Karen fished out a screwdriver from her robe, crouched down, and started working the lock. For a second, I thought about busting out the door and confronting her, but then I figured, let's see how far she'll actually go. I started recording on my phone. She got the panel open, grinned like she'd just cracked Fort Knox, and started mumbling to herself about illegal equipment and server farms. She had no clue the panel was booby-trapped a pressure plate right inside just in case someone tampered with it. The moment her hand brushed that sensor, everything kicked off. My house lights snapped to blood-red steel shutters, clanged down, yard lights lit up the whole block like the Vegas Strip, and most importantly, a silent alarm shot through encrypted channels straight to Titan's emergency desk. Karen yelped, dropped her flashlight, and ran for my front gate, which had already auto-locked. Everywhere she went, motion sensors tripped, sending more alarms up the chain. My phone went nuts, Titan's security system alerts, and then the message that made my heart skip: Federal Response Team deployed. ETA 12 minutes, shelter in place. By this point, all I could do was watch and wait. I knew the rules. If you're working on defense contracts and your system gets tripped, you don't argue with the protocol. Doesn't matter if you think it's a nosy neighbor or a foreign agent, you treat it like a threat. And sure enough, right on schedule 10 minutes later, black SUVs tore onto Maple Ridge Court, tactical teams jumped out weapons, up radios blasting. I swear the whole neighborhood was watching from behind curtains and camera phones. A helicopter was overhead turning the cul-de-sac into a scene out of Call of Duty. Karen was still trapped in my backyard, pressed up against the fence, looking like she'd seen a ghost. I heard her screeching at the agents. "This is a mistake. I'm the HOA president. I was just checking for violations." She pointed to her house like that was some kind of badge. The lead agent, Morrison, a big guy in full gear, stepped forward, told her to put her hands up and step away from the fence. "You don't understand," she wailed. "This man has illegal equipment. I was just checking." I finally came outside, security badge out, voice as steady as I could manage. "Agent Morrison, I called David Lawson, Titan Defense. This is a false alarm. Neighbor trespassing, not espionage." Morrison lowered his weapon just a little, called it in, and after a tense radio exchange nodded. "We'll need a full debrief," he said. Then nodded toward Karen, who was trembling so hard she almost dropped her slippers. And her, "Oh, that's Karen Fitzgerald," I said, probably with a little too much satisfaction. "President of the HOA and chronic trespasser. She broke into my security panel to find HOA violations. I've got the whole thing on video." The next hour was a blur. Questions, paperwork, verification codes, the works. The agents photographed the panel, took our statements. And Karen, for the first time since I'd moved in, was completely speechless. She was pale, lips moving, but nothing coming out as the reality of what she'd done finally hit her. Finally, Agent Morrison handed down the verdict. "Ms. Fitzgerald, you've triggered a federal security response by tampering with classified infrastructure. That's a serious federal offense." Karen protested. "I didn't know I was just." But Morrison shook his head, dead serious. "Ignorance isn't a defense. You trespassed and tampered with federal security. At minimum, that's federal trespassing. At worst, attempted espionage." Karen looked like she might faint. "Espionage? I'm not. You were breaking and entering," I cut in. "Don't forget months of stalking and harassment, all of it documented." Morrison nodded. "Ms. Fitzgerald, you'll be receiving a federal summons. Get a lawyer. And if I were you, I'd stay far away from Mr. Lawson's property. Any more incidents, you're going straight to jail." As the feds wrapped up, Morrison pulled me aside. "Titan's legal team will follow up to make sure your security isn't compromised. And David, consider bigger warning signs." Just saying. By the time the last SUV rolled out, my street was full of gawking neighbors, most of them clutching their phones like Oscars. Within hours, the footage was all over the internet. Karen found her voice as soon as the feds were gone, shaking, glaring robe covered in mud. "You set me up," she hissed. "You did this on purpose." I just looked at her, dead calm. "I didn't do anything except let you face the consequences. You broke in. You tampered with federal gear. You harassed me for months. That's all on you." She tried to sound tough. "The HOA will hear about this," but you could tell the fire was gone. "Yeah," I said, "they'll love hearing their president is under federal investigation for espionage. I wonder how that'll impact property values." The weeks that followed were the kind of karma you almost never get to see in real life. The video of Karen being surrounded by armed agents blew up online. Hashtags like #PentagonKaren and #HOA Gone Wild started trending. Local news picked it up, then national. Karen Fitzgerald became the poster child for HOA overreach. Her face plastered everywhere. Everyone talking about that crazy HOA lady who messed with the wrong house. The board held an emergency meeting. I showed up armed with a thick folder, every complaint, every letter, every clip, plus a letter from Titan's lawyers making it real clear just how much trouble Karen had dumped on the HOA. The vote was unanimous. Karen was out. But it didn't stop there. The feds pressed charges trespassing on a property with classified materials, tampering with federal security, attempted breach of national defense infrastructure. Her lawyer looked like he was going to puke as he entered her plea. The judge, a sharp-eyed woman who took no nonsense, read out the charges deadpan. "Ms. Fitzgerald, do you admit to trespassing and tampering with equipment you suspected was government-related?" Karen's voice was a whisper. "Yes, Your Honor." They cut a deal. Probation finds a permanent record. 2 years probation, 5 grand in fines, 200 hours of community service, and the warning that any slip-up meant jail. The gavel came down. Karen cried. Her real estate license under review. Turns out federal charges aren't a selling point. These days, Maple Ridge is quieter. People mind their own business. Every so often, someone will glance at my house with a new kind of respect or fear. As for Karen, last I heard she was picking up trash along the freeway, orange vest and all. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't caught her, if she'd gotten away with it. Or what would have happened if Titan had responded even more aggressively. Justice maybe. Overkill depends who you ask. So yeah, call it overkill, call it karma, call it whatever you want. But that night, everyone learned a lesson about messing with the wrong neighbor. What would you have done? Did Karen get what she deserved, or did the system go too far? Let me know in the comments, because in neighborhoods like this, sometimes the real drama doesn't even start until the sun comes up.